Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool, and for the show today we have one very important story to cover. The Director General ISPR Major General Babar Iftikhar has held a press conference. He has reviewed the foremost security developments in the past year. He's spoken about the different issues that Pakistan is experiencing with regards to their security, both at the international front and also at the domestic front. Major General Babar Iftikhar highlighted many issues that we will be discussing today. We'll divide these issues into two segments. One with regards to our foreign policy concerns and our concerns with our neighbors, and the other as to what is going on politically within Pakistan. So the first segment will be covering two major aspects with regards to the situation in Afghanistan, the development of the security situation and challenges that Pakistan still has to experience at the western border. Of course, they were also highlighted by DG ISPR, and he spoke about how the fencing at the Pak-Afghan border is going to be completed at all costs, and the blood of the martyrs will not go to waste. This, of course, is an important factor in establishing security at the border for the protection of the people at both sides. And he also emphasized that this is nothing to do with trade and movement of people. It is only for the protection of the people and for, of course, the security concerns. We also know that a major influx of the Afghan military also came in, and that was also one of the biggest challenges that Pakistan faced. In the future, the kind of situation that we are seeing evolving in Afghanistan will pose other serious challenges. This is going to be discussed in the show today, along with what the DG ISPR mentioned with regards to the situation in India, with particular reference to Kashmir. We know today, of course, is the 5th of January, the day back in 1949 when the right to self-determination was promised by the United Nations to the people of Kashmir. Unfortunately, the promise has still not been fulfilled. And on top of that, we know that the situation keeps on deteriorating, and the Indian forces in the occupied valley continue to violate the human rights of the people there and try to change the demographics of the valley, conduct operations which are false flag operations, and of course also martyr so many of the civilians in Kashmir under the garb of labeling them as terrorists. Of course, the situation in Kashmir is an important one for Pakistan. It was always morally, politically and diplomatically supported the Kashmiri brethren, and this support will continue to be extended. The kind of challenges that, of course, we face with regards to how we need to deal this in the future, and India false propaganda claims, all of this is going to be discussed in the show as well. On the domestic front, we have two very important issues. One with regards to speculations regarding the civil military leadership, which the DG ISPR made very clear is on the same page, and there is absolutely no need to involve this into any sort of discussion. Of course, he also highlighted how there are far more serious problems to be discussed within Pakistan, and it is not just this factor. However, this is something that he emphasized is what both parties are clear on, and that there is no major evidence that comes when people speculate and talk about different deals, specifically reference to the return of the previous Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. He also talked about how the national security policy is a very important milestone for Pakistan to achieve, and how it will help provide synergy in the different institutions and move forward with a coordinated action plan. We will also discuss that in further detail in our show, The Debate, today. Unfortunately, we've not been joined by one of our regular analysts, Mr. Farrukh Pitafi. He's a bit under the weather, and he is unfortunately not with us. We pray that he feels better soon and that he joins us. With me is Raja Faisal, and he also shares the same sentiments, and we were both earlier also recording a message for Farrukh and wishing him a speedy recovery. Yes, Faisal, we are actually
but obviously
Farrukh.
without Farrukh Farrukh is just like an elder brother to us, and he's just like a mentor for us, and without him, of course, we always are waiting for him.
Absolutely, but he'll be back soon, and he'll be back on his feet very soon, inshallah, and will be in the show with us. For today's segment, in the first part of the show, when we're talking about the foreign policy initiatives and, of course, the challenges that Pakistan faces, we have two respected guests with us who have joined us online in the debate. We've been joined by Brigadier Retired Rashid Wali Janjua, who's the acting president, IPRI. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. And we've also been joined by foreign affairs expert, Mr. Qamar Chima. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us on the show. Before we start the discussion, we have a short clip to play on Afghanistan, what the DG ISPR spoke about today in his press conference.
पाकिस्तान से गैर मुल्की अफवाज का अचानक इनखला और इससे पैदा होने वाली सूरत हाल, इसके बराह रास्त असरात पाकिस्तान की सिक्योरिटी पर पड़े। हम मुकम्मल तौर पर फोकस्ड हैं और वेस्टर्न बॉर्डर मैनेजमेंट रजीम के तहत जो काम जारी हैं वो मुअय्यना मुद्दत में इंशाल्लाह पाए तकमील को पहुँचेंगे। बॉर्डर मैनेजमेंट के तहत पाक अफ़गान बैनुल-अक़वामी सरहद पे बाड़ लगाने का काम तकरीबन 94% मुकम्मल हो चुका है और पाक ईरान बॉर्डर पर 71% से ज़ायद बाड़ लगाने का काम मुकम्मल किया जा चुका है। पाक अफ़गान बैनुल-अक़वामी सरहद पर लगाई गई ये फेंस, ये दोनों अतराफ़ बसने वाले लोगों को सिक्योरिटी, आमदोरफ्त और तिजारत, इसको रेगुलेट करने के लिए इस वक्त की अशद ज़रूरत है। इसका मकसद लोगों को तकसीम करना नहीं बल्कि उन्हें महफूज बनाना है। बॉर्डर एरियाज़ के लोग बॉर्डर टर्मिनल्स और डेजिग्नेटेड क्रॉसिंग पॉइंट से तयशुदा तरीक़ाकार के मुताबिक रोज़ाना आ जा रहे हैं। इस तरीक़ाकार को वक्त के साथ मज़ीद मौसर बनाया जाएगा। इस बाढ़ के लगाने में हमारे शहदा का खून शामिल है। यमन की बाढ़ है, ये मुकम्मल होगी और इंशाल्लाह कायम रहेगी।
Spoke about with regards to the fencing and the border management at the Pak-Afghan border. I'll start with you, Mr. Rashid. When we hear statements coming in from the DG-ISPR with the commitment and the resolve to complete the fencing of the border, we also want to be able to emphasize the need, specifically with the evolving situation in Afghanistan. Of course, since the Taliban have taken control of Afghanistan, there are a myriad of issues and challenges that Pakistan also faces. How significant it is for us to be able to complete the fencing of this border with regards to the security challenges that the Afghanistan side now poses to Pakistan?
Thanks, Anna. It's very important for us to complete this fence because you know the background. This was initiated in response to the accusations of Pakistan that Pakistan is unable to control cross-border movement. And also there were other issues related to narco trafficking, which was a source of continual friction between the two countries. And this fencing project was initiated both to secure our borders, to ensure that the narco trafficking and other such activities are properly regulated, and also to create a semblance of order on a border which has always been regarded as a prickly hedge by several commentators in the past. And ever since 1893, once this border was formally sanctioned through an agreement during the time of Amir Abdur Rahman. Ever since then, all the agreements which have been done between Pakistan and Afghanistan include and refer to this border as a proper international border, and not as Durand line, which is exploited sometimes by forces inimical to Pakistan across the border. Now, one important aspect is operational, and that is you require a complete control on your borders so as to ensure that no ingress takes place and no terrorists cross from across Afghanistan into your areas. And secondly, the narco trafficking and other illegal activities which harm your economy, those are controlled. So for both these factors, it was very essential to secure this border because this was a 2,600 kilometers long border spanning KP areas and Balochistan both. And I think when we claim that we have completed 93% of the project, I think it's a very, very significant achievement on part of Pakistan Army.
All right, Mr. Kamachima, when we speak about all of these different factors that, of course, are important and which is why this fencing first started to take place at the Pak-Afghan border, do you think that when completed, or even now, it has full capacity of dealing with all of these issues, as Mr. Rashid was saying?
Well, absolutely, this has a capacity, and we have just seen that this post 15th August, just last year when the Taliban took over Kabul, and how there was an uncertainty in Afghanistan. And I think that the forecast and the measures which was taken by Pakistani authorities they rightly understood that these days are to come and this situation is to happen. So the measures which were taken, they were very well have been understood by everyone internationally and by Pakistan. Had this not been wire at this place, fencing has not been at this place, there had been a huge influx of the Afghans in Pakistan, and we would not have been in a position to manage it. And even if only in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or in the Balochistan, and looking at especially the terrain where we do not have an influence, and especially, the entire, forget Pakistan, the entire Europe and Turkey, even they are taking measures. Turkey is installing fencing on Turkey-Iran borders because they understand that because of the situation in Afghanistan, people are fleeing from here. So the situation would have been dire. And one of the things that recently the IPRI did a conference, one of the major challenge for Pakistan is a societal security. So had all these people from Afghanistan been here in Pakistan, we would have seen a major societal challenges. The way we have seen the economy have seen that there is a problem, how the dollar gray market is being seen in Peshawar or in Karachi. Had this fence not been at place, Pakistan's financial challenges, societal challenges, and security challenges have been manifold. So I think all what have been done is justified, and I think the Taliban must have understood that whatever Pakistan is doing, this is for them and this is for Pakistan as well. This wire is not to divide people. This wire is to this fencing is for making the people of Afghanistan and Pakistan more secure.
Yeah,
Right.
Brigadier Rashid, obviously we understood, and from the both sides, from Pakistan side as well as from the Taliban side, it is the understanding that there is no trouble, no issues between them. But do you not think that there are certain issues with the lower cadres of Taliban, or maybe there are a few of the factions who are pretending to be the Taliban, but maybe they have their own ambitions or they have their own agenda? Do you not think that there are certain people who are disrupting the chain of command of the Taliban in Afghanistan, sir?
Yes, I tend to agree with you. As alluded to by DG ISPR also during his press conference today, there are operational and there are local dynamics to this whole fencing issue. Now, at local dynamics, let me tell you, can only be evident to us once we take a toward the horizon of the general environment which is prevailing inside Afghanistan. Afghanistan, Taliban have just taken over, and they are beset with serious governance problems, liquidity crunch, and there is a kind of a vacuum, governance vacuum also, and command and control vacuum also, which DG ISPR also alluded to. Their Afghan Taliban do not have adequate funds to pay off their armed cadres as well. So in this security vacuum, there are certain local elements, even if they belong to the Taliban cadre. We know because of the issues of discipline and the nature of the loose militia that Taliban were, their cadres, some of them are indisciplined. And some of them are unhappy because of their own reasons, because a humanitarian crisis is brewing inside Afghanistan, and those problems compound the discipline issue. So it can be, one-odd isolated incidents because of the local indiscipline that could occur, and that is how Pakistan responded also quite circumspectly and maturely, treating it as a local incident and taking up the case at the highest possible level. And Taliban regime in turn also responded quite positively, and they showed proclivity to deal with this issue in the larger interest of peace between the two countries. And we should be ready to countenance these issues as the problems multiply inside Afghanistan, because there are tribes, there are pressures of the tribes also on Taliban, because you understand what we call smuggling, it is called trade on the other side of the border. And once there is no livelihood, once there is a humanitarian crisis, there are other serious economic problems being faced by the tribes. Their businesses are completely gone because of this long war. Now they are under tremendous pressure, Taliban also. So sometimes they have to play to the gallery as well to appease their own people and look the other way while this isolated incident happens on this or that place. But that doesn't mean that overall objective of Taliban is irredentist, which was the case during Ashraf Ghani's government and prior to that, because we know there is a history of irredentist claims, and that strikes a very sensitive note in Pakistan. But that's all closed and past transaction. This is an international boundary for all practical purposes. And as pointed out by General Babar, this has been consecrated by the blood of our martyrs. The 674 structures that have been created in the kind of forts and checkposts to take care of this fence, because no fence is of any use unless it is kept under surveillance and observation. And there are now modern means like drones, like cameras, like quick reaction force, and all those border elements. We are raising 67 wings basically to pull back army and then hand over that area to the frontier corps. That was the case since ages. And I'm sure with all these measures, those elements which are striking a lone furrow, and those because of their own compulsions, maybe indiscipline, maybe impatience, maybe some misunderstanding, those elements sometimes resort to these incidents. But
right,
to me,
absolutely,
it would be resolved through talk, through a mechanism to sit down and talk and create more crossing points if possible.
A connecting question from my brother Kamar Chima. Kamar bhai, do you not think that as the DG ISPR, he himself mentioned that of course he's having a good relation obviously with the Taliban in terms of the border fencing which is going on, and there is an understanding. But we, as Brigadier Saab has just mentioned about the rogue elements, what about the rogue elements? Could they be used by someone outside of Afghanistan as a proxy in coming days? And I think this is what our DG ISPR and our forces and Pakistan itself is aware of, the fact that anyone can actually use these kind of rogue forces as a proxy against Pakistan or any of the neighboring country. Do you think that this might be the case?
Well, obviously this could be the case, and you understand that TTP, Al Qaeda, and ISIS are still in Afghanistan, and they have not gone away. And when the Ashraf Ghani regime fell, all these people flew from the jails from Afghanistan. So now they're hiding somewhere in the mountains or the caves, and they're getting, for a moment, India had a problem of supplying them money and weapons. So for a moment, they do not know how to move on. But you understand that India is getting very closer to the Central Asian countries. They have also established a military base, I think, somewhere in Kyrgyzstan. So remember, when the Indians flew from Afghanistan, they didn't go from Kabul to New Delhi. They first landed in Central Asia. And we have to be very careful how things evolve over there, because for Pakistan, the important point is that we must not let any other NDS to be established which should work against Pakistan, because we have been paying a heavy price to be so-called advocate of the Taliban. The world is calling us advocate of the Taliban. Even the local Pakistani opposition is calling the present incumbent government of Imran Khan's the advocate of the Taliban. So we have to make them aware that what kind of sacrifices we are giving financially, politically, socially, psychologically, and above all, our international image is also under question, because everybody is saying that we are partisan, we are pro-Taliban, and we are not being taken neutral. So now the Qatar and the other countries are being taken, and we are being taken as if we are just advocating the case of the Taliban. So we have to make at the top level in Afghanistan, to Mullah Hassan Akhund and to Foreign Minister Muttaqi, that this must not happen, and they need to make it sure that the Taliban are saying that they are going to make an army of 100,000 people. So that 100,000 people, how they're going to make a discipline, this is a very serious concern for Pakistan. And remember, when the Americans were making a big military, financing a big military in Afghanistan, We warned them, don't do this. So I think this is where we have to see that if this kind of a military is again established by the Taliban, and if they do not have a control over the entire hierarchy, how that things are going to move, and the poverty,
Right,
the narco
absolutely, Mr.
businesses
Kamachi.
there.
You're absolutely right, and those are valid concerns, and the
Yeah.
stakes are quite high for Pakistan, and perhaps the world still doesn't recognize that, and we need to emphasize that more. With regards to our stakes at the western border, of course, there are stakes involved at the eastern side as well. We know that the line of control is prone to a lot of ceasefire violations, but DG ISPR earlier speaking in the press conference said that since the ceasefire, there has been a progress that has been witnessed on the line of control. Brigadier Rashid, when we speak about what has happened in the past at the line of control and what is going on at the moment, and if we review the year 2021, do you think that at least perhaps in just this aspect, the situation that India and Pakistan have been experiencing has progressed a little?
I wouldn't say progressed a little, but what I can say is that it's a bit more stable now.
All
And
right.
by default, the credit goes to Chinese because they have engaged Indians on line of actual control in Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh area, where they have their own deployments. And it is because of that, India is for the first time countenancing a two-front situation. So that might act as a dampener on their predisposition towards adventurism across line of control. But even before that, Pakistan's deployment on the line of control is very mature, very well coordinated, and I don't think so. India would resort to any kind of adventurism, especially after the Pulwama incident and the kind of response it received from Pakistan. Uh, Regarding a black swan incident or you know taking diverting attention away from internal politics and trying to create a diversion, well, in those areas there are still dangers lurking, and we cannot lower our guard. But as far as the line of control is concerned, our border defenses are quite stable. And I don't think India should be even thinking of any kind of adventurism. And if they do, they would definitely face a two-front situation because things
Like,
and environment has changed.
yeah, Kamar, I'll come towards you. Of course, you are someone, always on the Indian media, and you know it better that they are always propagating against Pakistan, especially when it comes to line of control. On the papers, we know everything is fine there when it comes to line of control. Ceasefire is active. But what do we do with the propaganda which is continuously being made by Indian media against Pakistan when it comes to, or they claim that Pakistan is tunneling, or maybe, institutions of Pakistan are tunneling the terrorist into Indian illegally occupied Kashmir. What do we do about that?
Well, I think first of all, they have been doing it for long. But I think all this war, what matters is that they're putting a lot of money in buying a lot of drones, even from Americans and from the Israelis. They are buying HP drones from Israel. They have invested a lot on this technological side. So I think they can look at what's going on. If there is some tunnels or if people are moving into, I think this is their failure. This is just trying to divert the attention. Prime Minister Imran Khan, when he took over office, he said the one simple thing: anyone who is picking up arms and going into the Indian occupied Kashmir for jihad, he's not Pakistan's friend. He's Pakistan's enemy. So this is a serious thing. This is a state's policy, and I think this must be looked from that lens. But for quite a long time, Indian have been harping this theme and chest thumping. Pakistan is the one who is keeping us engaged. I think the entire attention has diverted. This 2003 ceasefire agreement, which has been formalized, I think that is success of the Pakistan security establishment, and that is success of Pakistan's foreign office as well. All what matters is that we have won this trust, and now whenever Prime Minister Modi will be losing some political brownie points, he may start this anything with Pakistan. And these days you might have seen that he's very much busy in other things. As Mr. Brigadier Jajua was mentioning, the Chinese are keeping them busy, and the Chinese are taking them to the next kind of a war. They are engaging them into the robotics war. So this is, the Indians are really worried that how to invest a lot of money, because into this electromagnetic warfare and its future dimensions of the military hardware, how they have to put the money there. So
Right.
the Indians are the Indian military, the former Indian generals are pressurizing Modi that you are fighting the wrong enemy. Pakistan is not an enemy. The enemy for them is China. So they need to look toward them, and for that they need money, resources, and a lot of political
Right,
will, which
and
we don't have
we
yet.
see that a lot of money is being spent on that. We'll continue the discussion and just take a look at what the DG ISPR spoke about with reference to India and Kashmir.
कुछ अरसे से पाकिस्तान के मुख्तलिफ इदारों के ख़िलाफ़ एक मुनज़्ज़म मुहिम चलाई जा रही जिसका बुनियादी मकसद हुकूमत, अवाम, इदारों और अफवाज पाकिस्तान के दरमियान खलीज पैदा करना है और इदारों पर अवाम के एतमाद को ठेस पहुँचाना। हम ऐसी तमाम सरगर्मियों के हवाले से न सिर्फ आगाह हैं बल्कि उनके मुख्तलिफ लिंकेजेस से भी वाकिफ़ हैं। पाकिस्तान में और पाकिस्तान से बाहर बैठे वो लोग जो हाफ ट्रूथ्स, फेक न्यूज़ और मन घड़त झूठे प्रोपेगेंडे से इदारों और शख्सियात को निशाना बनाकर पाकिस्तान को नुकसान पहुंचाने की कोशिशों में हमतन मसरूफ़ हैं। ये लोग पहले भी नाकाम हुए थे और आइंदा भी नाकाम होंगे इंशाल्लाह।
Another thing that the DG ISPR mentioned is, of course, with reference to the never-ending series of defense procurement, something that Mr. Kamarchima earlier was also speaking about. And although that may be in reference to the threat posed to India by the Chinese side, Mr. Rashid, do you think that this also means that there needs to be a certain change in our strategy or in our defense with reference to India? Because, of course, this also puts the entire region at stake when you have an arms race continuing. Does Pakistan need to tackle this a little differently, even though it may be targeted towards China?
You see, Pakistan is very clear. It has, it premises its defense upon conventional deterrence as well as the strategic deterrence. While your strategic deterrence is in place, Pakistan as a smaller belligerent in the conflict equation of South Asia would always try to limit the space for a limited conflict that India is seeking as a belligerent. And I'm very confident that Pakistan has managed to cramp that space through its conventional response. We have our, forward-leaning defense posture now. We have taken all the safeguards for our conventional deterrence to keep the Indian conventional instrument in check. And we also have special antidotes for some of the measures India is taking in anti-ballistic missile shield creation to kind of degrade our strategic deterrence. So there are antidotes which obviously cannot be shared here on the media, but Pakistan has all those elements, and it is conventionally and strategically ideally poised at this point of time to take on any aggressive designs that India might have. Regarding your specific question that how much Pakistan should spend in response to what India is doing vis-a-vis, Chinese, and remember that India is creating the Chinese bogey just to earn brownie points from the West and to further cement its strategic alliance and gain the benefits. It's using a deft strategy and deft diplomacy to get the best from East and West both. And they have good arms procurement relationships with Russia. They have a very good and strong, robust relationship with the United States. But that everything that they are doing is based upon a megalomania of a big power status. They do not have a clear and present danger in shape of a country which is 1/5 the size of their armed forces from Pakistan. Similarly, China has no aggressive designs. China has never invaded. The only time they had a standoff was in '62, in which Chinese willingly vacated Arunachal Pradesh heights. So at this point of time, whatever they are spending, I think Pakistan has to keep a balance and considering.
All right. We only have time for one more question. Faisal.
Yeah. Kamar Chima, can we look at the situation from a different angle, in which can we say that the West is creating threats for India so that India buys more and more arms from them?
Well, I think the rise of the China is not just for India. This is something which was to happen. Obviously, for example, I think the Americans failed in, for example, to convince India that let's make this quadrilateral security dialogue or a security platform. So that is why they had to go for this AUKUS, Australia, US, UK, another triangular platform to give any military response to the Chinese. So this quadrilateral security dialogue, having these Chinese, Japanese, Australians, Americans, and Indians, where India is a partner with them. I think India is smart enough to acquire every kind of military technology. And I remember the US Secretary Blinken in his visit to India said that we would request our Quad partners to give preferential treatment to India. So India, for example, India got S-400 and the Americans are asking to give them a one-time waiver, and they don't want to give that waiver to the Turkey. So I think India is playing very smartly this game. They don't want to get entangled and with the war with the Chinese. And remember, when the Chinese soldiers entered the Indian territory in the Galwan, they killed the Chinese soldier. They took away, they made some of the soldiers their war enemy. The Narendra Modi mentioned in front of the Indian people the Chinese never entered in the territory, and that was lie. So the Chinese understand the Indians cannot fight with them, and they are playing. The Narendra Modi just plays the gallery. For him, talking to Pakistan or going for these kind of threats, these verbal abuses, and going for that kind of thing is easier. But fighting with the Chinese is a real thing. They can't do it. But they want to take up the advantage of the Americans and the rest of the world, and they want to take, for example, even the supply chain thing. The world is moving. For example, iPhone is going to be made in India. So they want to take this side of advantage of the West, but they don't want to get EU involved in any kind of a conflict.
Right, absolutely. We'll quickly move on to a short clip from the press conference, one more short clip from the press conference, and continue our discussion.
17 से 19 दिसंबर को सरायेवो में मुनक़िद होने वाले रसल ट्राइब्यूनल ऑन कश्मीर की फाइंडिंग्स चश्मकुशा है। इस ट्राइब्यूनल में 15 बैनुल-अक़वामी जजेस और उनके अलावा कई बैनुल-अक़वामी माहिरीन ने शिरकत की। इस ट्राइब्यूनल ने 4 एरियाज़ को फोकस किया, जिसमें जेनोसाइड, डीकोलोनाइजेशन, सेटलर कलोनियलिज्म और कश्मीरियों के ख़िलाफ़ जंगी जराइम शामिल है। इस ट्राइब्यूनल के शुरका ने ह्यूमन राइट्स वॉच और एमनेस्टी इंटरनेशनल की रिपोर्ट्स, जो कि हिंदुस्तान की इंसानी हकूक़ की ख़िलाफ़ वर्जियों के मुतालिक थीं, उनका ख़ास तौर पर जिक्र किया कि किस तरह 7 दहाइयों में हिंदुस्तान की कश्मीरियों के ख़िलाफ़ फ़ौजी, सियासी, मुआशी, समाजी और सकाफ़ती जंग जारी है, और किस तरह वो जिनेवा कन्वेंशन और आलमी कवानीन की ख़िलाफ़ वर्जी कर रहे हैं। इस हवाले से आज की तारीख़ बहुत अहम है। On 5th of January 1949, the people of Kashmir were promised the right to self-determination by the United Nations. That promise remains unfulfilled.
My last question on this segment would be to you, Brigadier Rashid. As you heard what the DG ISPR was saying, there are, of course, so many different platforms that are coming forward with evidence, with details as to how different human rights violations continue to exist in occupied Kashmir. And a lot of this is being shared at the international front as well. But whenever we talk about the kind of actions that India is taking, we usually say that it's done because India wants to divert the attention from these matters. Is the attention really being diverted? And if not, are we doing something about bringing the world's attention towards this issue?
The answer to your question is that attention is not diverted because what we are not doing, but what the international community chooses to look the other way around because of the geopolitical clout of India. And we know there are forums like ICC, ICJ, United Nations Security Council, General Assembly. There are forums on which we can take up this case. There are diplomatic solutions, there are lawfare solutions, and the Russell Tribunal that you just mentioned is a laudable initiative, and it is being supported by a Canadian registered NGO, Civitas. And the Russell Tribunal was created initially to highlight the violation of international law and human rights in the context of Vietnam conflict, and that shaped and that changed the whole global narrative on Vietnam. You see the impact of that lawfare initiative, and this current event that is held from 15th to I think 19th December here in Sarajevo. It was the right place because Sarajevo was a place of another genocide which was conducted by the Serbs against the Bosnians, and that Russell Tribunal has highlighted three aspects. Have been one of their important findings is that this is a dispute that needs resolution. Second, that a digital apartheid has been imposed by India. Third is that genocide, according to Genocide Watch, there are 10 stages and the Kashmir has reached the 6th stage. Fourth is the crimes against humanity part. So there are certain, human rights violations once they exceed a certain level of atrocities, killings, incarcerations, it goes, and which is systematic. It attracts crime against humanity, response. Then
absolutely,
the war crime is only in the context of an occupying army. And we know that Hari Singh's instrument of accession was also spurious because he was not in control. And after revocation of Article 370, Indian Army is no longer an army which is on law and order and internal security. It is an occupying part, army.
Absolutely.
And as an occupying army, once they do these atrocities, these come in the category of war crimes, which is much more
Absolutely.
serious.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Rashid Janjua. You're making excellent points, but unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you very much for joining us. Mr. Kamar Chima also being part of the show. Thank you, gentlemen, for being part of the discussion on the foreign policy issues that were highlighted by DG ISPR's press conference earlier today. We'll now move on to what he talked about at the domestic front, of course, with reference to the civil military leadership being on the same page, and of course, this being excluded from the discussion that always goes on when we discuss the political scenario within the country. For this, we have been joined by political analyst Mr. Javed Chattoon, who's joined us online. Thank you very much, Mr. Javed, for being a part of the debate. Of course, you must have heard what the DG ISPR had to say with regards to the issues at the political scenario at the domestic front that we face, with an important reference to, of course, speculations being made of the deal between the establishment and, of course, the previous Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. The DG ISPR also spoke about how these issues need to be taken out of any political discussion and how these concerns of the so-called establishment and, of course, the military civil leadership need to be put at bay now, because this is something that is being reiterated by the government and by the military leadership as well, that there is no such thing going on. When we speak about speculations, that's all we have. We don't have any evidence. So do you think that when we see such speculations on the rise again, they don't have any substance?
Thank you very much. I think some very bad precedents were being set by some of the political parties in Pakistan to drag in the security establishment, and there was a talk of some kind of a deal or expected deal between a major political party, Pakistan Muslim League N, and the security establishment. And secondly, the nightly talk shows they picked up these speculations, and then the conspiracy theories started circulating in Pakistan that probably some kind of a political deal between the Pakistan Muslim League and the military establishment was in the offing. And I think very rightly, very timely, and very emphatically, the military spokesman rubbished all those speculations, and I think he cleared the air, and now I think very much is obvious that there was no such talks between the two sides as far as the political deal was concerned. And in my personal opinion, the political parties must refrain from dragging in, as the military spokesman pointed out, into the political arena, because the topmost priority of Pakistan Army is to safeguard the geographical boundaries of Pakistan. And any talk of dragging in the military establishment into a partisan kind of a debate openly in the media does not serve Pakistan and doesn't serve military as well. So I think
Absolutely.
it
And you
was a
mentioned
very
other
time.
political parties involved as well, and surely the national interest reigns supreme across all the different political parties that exist. And if that is so, as it should be, then of course this issue and the kind of impact that it has on Pakistan's position in the international community must be obvious to different political parties as well, because this does, of course, then would be raising questions or doubts as Pakistan's position as a key strategic player and as a responsible state. So, do you think that this sentiment is not shared across the political parties in Pakistan, because surely this goes against national interest?
It does go against the national interests, and any kind of a meddling, overt or covert, by any military establishment is not looked upon favorably, particularly in a
Right.
democracy and in a parliamentary form of democracy. So in Pakistan, definitely there has been a history of interventions on part of the military establishment, and there have been military rules as well. But I think military has distanced itself quite effectively. And I think the times have changed as well. There can't be any military rule anywhere acceptable in the world. And even in Pakistan, Pakistan Army has evolved into an institution which has become more disciplined, more organized. And of course, I think their primary responsibility, apart from the geographical boundaries to protect from the external enemies, they're also bound to protect Pakistan from internal enemies as well.
Of course.
There are different arms and different wings, including the military intelligence and the inter-services intelligence. They're all responsible to safeguard Pakistan's internal security as well. So I think so
Jitendra,
far so good. But
Jitendra Sahab, I just wanted to
I think
add,
sad.
we did talk about the political parties. Should we talk about the journalists and a few of the obviously media anchors as well? Because in the evening shows, they are the ones who are actually initiating such kind of debates. Should they refrain from this as well, sir?
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think some second tier leadership of Pakistan Muslim League N, they started talking about a speculatively about any impending deal between the party and the military leadership. The some of the evening talk shows and the host, they started, and we all know that they have got their own vested interests as well. And as a professional journalist, I believe and strongly believe that without checking their own facts, they shouldn't indulge in such kind of discussions in the evening talk shows, and without any substantive proof of it. So I think they should refrain from dragging in the Pakistan Army into political arena, because they are somehow or the other they are damaging the interests of Pakistan. They should realize that. And
Right.
basically, the evening talk show hosts, they become judge, jury, and executioners as well. They believe that they are the ultimate kind of people to talk about Pakistan's future, political national security wise, and in so many other, even the foreign policy.
Right. Of course, and
well.
that is indeed unfortunate, because of course they have major influence on public opinion and they need to act responsibly. My last question to you, Mr. Javed, would be with regards to the national security policy. Of course, this is an important development in Pakistan, a very significant steps towards establishing security within the country, and of course having a strategy across all different institutions and a proper framework as to providing security and of course facing such challenges. As to the implementation and the synchronization of different institutions with regards to this policy, that is the major question now that we already have a direction and framework. What sort of measures or steps do you think need to be considered when we talk about implementing this policy across all the institutions?
Yes, yes. I think it is an extremely important paradigm shift as far as Pakistan's national security policy is concerned, because it simply focuses on Pakistan's economic security. Because now we see everywhere, if any given country is economically strong, it becomes militarily strong as well. We have got a very important precedent. When Soviet Union disintegrated, they were among the two strongest military powers besides the United States. But economically, the Soviet Union was a weak nation, weak state, and ultimately it disintegrated because of its economic weakness. And I think our national security policy rightly focuses on and says that it is the epicenter, it is the core of Pakistan's
absolutely.
national
And that,
security.
of course, is a major step forward. We're almost out of time. Thank you very much, Mr. Javed Chattoon, for taking the time out and being a part of the show. And of course, the discussion with regards to what needs to be done at the domestic front. Faisal, we have, of course, overviewed the different aspects of DG ISPR's press conference, and he reviewed all of the different challenges that Pakistan faces on the external threat and, of course, in the internal domestic politics as well. And we only hope that moving forward, all of these challenges are met with renewed commitment. Thank you for watching the debate.